So let me start by talking a little bit about the human rights system in the United Nations. I'll try to keep this very brief because I know that whatever I say is double because of interpretation. So the human rights system at the UN is centered around the Human Rights Council. It's a body that is elected by members of the United Nations General Assembly, and it focuses on human rights around the world. And just as the Human Rights Council has a global focus, so too is my own mandate from the Human Rights Council global. I'm not the special rapporteur on Japan freedom of expression issues. I'm the special rapporteur on freedom of opinion and expression globally. So I'm one of over 50 human rights special rapporteurs for the Human Rights Council. In other words, I'm one of many, many mechanisms that monitor human rights around the world. And my focus by appointment of the Human Rights Council is on freedom of opinion and freedom of expression. And as part of my role, like other special rapporteurs, I basically do three kinds of things. So the first is that I communicate directly with governments around the world when I have a concern about its implementation of freedom of expression. The second thing is I conduct country visits, like my country visit to Japan last April, a year ago April, or my country visits also last year to the countries of Tajikistan in March and to Turkey in November. And then the third tool, let's say, in my toolkit is to conduct thematic reports. So basically studies on particular areas of freedom of expression that are under some form of threat around the world. Okay, so in my work, whether it's thematic work or it's interacting with governments, I tend to focus on a number of common themes and common threats. And some of those include the kinds of issues that I've addressed in the context of Japan. So those involve issues such as the protection of and the promotion of an independent media and independent journalists. It involves also the protection of the rights that individuals who are members of vulnerable communities have, and it involves digital rights. So the kinds of freedom of expression that we think we enjoy, and that actually in Japan I think people do very much enjoy, in terms of freedom of expression on the internet. I'll mention two of those issues and then I'll stop talking and we can take questions. The first issue is media independence. There is in Japan a number of very strong outlets and journalists who do investigative journalism. There's no question about that. And no journalists are being arrested for the content of their journalism. At the same time, there are clearly risks out there to the independence of the media. And my report emphasizes one particular area where I think the government can do significant improvement to strengthen the independence of the media, and that is in the creation of an independent broadcast regulator. So here's something that most people don't remember or don't know. That is that Japan, at the earliest post-war founding of the Japanese government, actually had an independent regulator for the broadcast media. But the first government, the first post-occupation government in Japan, abolished, for reasons of efficiency really, abolished that independent regulator, and now regulation of the media is lodged with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. And my view, based on my understanding of the global standards for media regulation, is that the media should not be regulated by the government directly, which could then, maybe not now, but in the future perhaps, be susceptible to government interference. It should be lodged in an independent, nonpartisan regulator of the media that does not have the power to suspend licenses based on content alone. A second is that the independent media itself doesn't enjoy any kind of organization of solidarity. So journalists have solidarity and loyalty, at least in the mass media, to their company rather than to other journalists. We also see significant amount of concern among journalists themselves, and I talked to far too many journalists during my visit and in the years since for this to be dismissed. Far too many journalists who see pressure in their day-to-day work not to cover certain issues that might be sensitive, not to cover issues that might be seen as overly critical of government. So those things combined, together with the quiche system that is really a form of access journalism, creates a general environment where media independence is very difficult to establish and is very important to fight for. I have no power. The only power that I have is that I enjoy a platform that's provided by the Human Rights Council. It's up to the people of Japan to decide whether my recommendations are nonsense or they merit some further consideration. Obviously, my hope is that the people of Japan don't think this is all nonsense, but that they take it into account. But these are merely recommendations. They are merely recommendations based on my analysis of human rights law, my analysis of media regulation and freedom of expression around the world, and comparing other democratic systems, basically the peer countries of Japan. And if the Japanese people think there are some good ideas here, my hope is that they become a part of public debate and that the government doesn't take these recommendations as a hostile act, but as a very, very friendly act to a member of the democratic community in the world. And that's all it is. But once I make the report to the Human Rights Council, which I will do publicly on June 12th, after that, it's in your hands, really, and in the hands of the government, but really in the hands of the people to decide if these are worth pursuing.